rhythms, and cultural conventions. World music playlists tend to fall back on English language pop and keep reinforcing the same cycle of visibility and engagement metrics that AI looks for. If you open up your Spotify or Apple Music right now and click on Discover Now, many English songs will be recommended to you. It doesn't matter where in the country or the world you are, you're going to see at least 10 or 5 English tracks right up on your screen. The impact that this has is that the recommendation engines and generative models trained on this lopsided data naturally optimize for English language patterns, which makes it much harder for non-English music to surface or even be accurately understood. Let's explore how this balance affects a continent like Africa. In Africa alone, there's over 2,000 indigenous languages spoken. Even major platforms tag and recommend primarily English or French language tracks in African music markets of different regional styles within African music, which again leads to a skewed selection of recommendations. The algorithms may be context of African music. Because of this lack of recommendations, lyrics tend to be more specific and may check actual places like Eko, Ojuelegba, Oshodi, Achille, Mami Market, and so on. Great training corpora so that underrepresented languages and regional genres are present in people needs text plus dynamic language detection layers that pivot on the fly. We refine our training objectives through a hierarchical approach, core style classification, followed by fine-grained native local annotators, DJs, local DJs, cultural custodians must review and vet the AI's outputs, providing targeted feedback that feeds directly into the training cycle. This collaborative human inquiry, let's say want to paint a tree, and you say, we'll use green to paint from the roots to the stem, like that. So what hierarchical means is that there's a broad concept, that in this case there's a broad emotion, such as, let's say, positive, negative, and neutral, for example. Then there's the fine-grained emotions, which are, so for positive you could have love, joy, different kinds of that. Then for negative you could also have disgust, you could have anger. So you're teaching the model what each of these things. So for, I know if you died for anything, the model would ideally interpret that as.
Basically, so in her presentation she mentioned that 17% of the world speaks English. So I'm looking at what is the motivation for companies like Spotify to actually inculcate or incorporate this diversity and fairness in their systems. Of course, they want to prioritize their bottom line and increase them, of course, but then more of the population, like you said, speak English. So what's the motivation for them? What's the need for them? Okay.
Before I dive into the motivation, I'm just going to say that English is not the only language that's spoken for. I understand that yes, it's being dominated by most people, but there's actual people and actual artists that are doing amazing stuff in music, but they are not doing it in English language. See Afrobeats, for example. 10 years ago, Afrobeats is not, or was not what it is now. Over the last 5 years, we've seen an immense shift in Afrobeat culture. Afrobeat is one of Nigeria's biggest exports now. So there's actually a growing market for this thing. It's just about meeting the demand. The demand is not as great as it should be.